November 29th, bringing you a Lake of the Ozarks fishing report. Today we are bringing it live from Bryant's Osage Outdoors here in Laurie. A little history on Bryant's, at least from my side. When I moved down here in 2002, it was one of the first guys I met, and they were out there on 135, that little tackle shop out there. It looked like an old resort cabin tackle shop out there, but one of the first two guys I met was Jamie and Ed, and became pretty good friends with them, and so much that they even helped me design the package for the Crappie Gator Zapper jigs when Denise and I bought the company in 2010. Helped us design them, and that's why they really show up, on the shelves, but and then either way, we've been friends for ever since we moved down here, but. I come in here a lot, frequent. You can see Dion works in here now. I highly advise people, if you're coming down here to the lake and you want just a little leg up or a little advice or a little hint or a little clue of what's going on, you come down here and talk to the man with the most history down here, bar none of anyone. Come in here. You work in here every day?
Yep, most every day. Yep.
Pretty much every day. But anyway, we'll get to the fishing report real quick. The water level is 656.26, so it's almost 4 foot low. I'd say pretty much winter pool, which usually doesn't happen until late January, but obviously this year it's been totally different. Lack of rain. Truman doesn't have any water in it, so Ozarks been pretty low. The last month and a half they've been drawing it down just to generate electricity. I'm assuming, minimum amount, but lake's been low. It's been fishing totally different this year. We're into November. Dion and I was just talking about the topwater bite. I think it's just going to elude us this year. I think the topwater bite was better in September than it was in October and mid-November like it normally is. If you kept track of any tournaments, it ain't taking much to win. There's been tournaments, just yesterday, Lawson won again with 13 pounds, I think, then a couple 12-pound limits. This past weekend, it was a 17. Actually, there was a 19-pound limit, believe it or not, on Saturday. Not sure what they caught him on. He told me he caught him on a head knocker buzzbait. They only had 4 fish for 19, so that was 4 good ones. So there is a topwater bite. I'll say another week or so.
Yeah.
Thank you. There's been years that it goes in well into December.
Sure. We catch them a lot of times on up into December, but normally it would be way more advanced. We would have been catching them for a month. I don't know why it's not been better than it has. Can I believe that they caught 4 that weighed 19? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because there's tons of those big gizzards up on the bank. But like I say, it's just been slow. And I say, if those guys caught 4 that weighed 19, I can believe that it was maybe on a topwater. But the crazy thing about it is, that's how tough it's been.
Yeah.
They might only have 4 keepers on all day.
Right. If they catch that 5, they possibly get them one of them mega bags.
Yeah.
But the water temp, it's still. I'm gonna say low to mid 50s. I had 55 Sunday, so we had a cool night or two, and it's gonna start creeping down. We're having 60 degree today, so it'll creep back up. So we're gonna probably hover, low 50s for another couple weeks. I don't know. This weekend looks good too, so we're gonna have an opportunity of good topwater bites still. It might really fire up here and get a good 2 weeks worth of topwater. But the jig's been consistent. Denise and I fished Sunday, and we went through probably 9-10 keepers, few of little Kentuckys, but some largemouth too. But we still only had right at 10 pounds for our best 5. But there was 52 boats, I think, in that tournament of just all Ozark hammers. And I think there was 2 17-pound bags, and then Dirk and Lawson had 13, got third with that, and then it went down pretty quick from there. So, but either way, the jig bite's been coming on really good. I'm just throwing the 3/8 ounce zapper, Crackgator zapper, and I'm just throwing just a little, the ring crawl. The green pumpkin red is my favorite color. Just pair that up from now. I'll throw this now till April and have a lot of confidence in it. So if you want to come down and just have it, keep it simple, just a zapper jig and a ring crawl from Crackgator. It's been working really good. Got another one here that I believe Dion had a lot into it, if he didn't design it. The hammer jig, tell us about that hammer jig.
We made the hammer jig basically for deeper structure fishing. We use it a lot, like right now, also just because of the way the hook hooks them. It's just an extremely good and efficient way of catching them. But I'm like Jim, I go down to a lighter one. I go down to like a 3/8. I keep my trailers real small. My whole bait's only going to be about 3 inches long. And I keep it pretty basic on my colors, green pumpkins, just real natural colors. I like crawdads on the back of them. I use this ring crawl a little bit on the back of it. And then sometimes when they get a little bit more aggressive and I'm getting more bites, sometimes I'll go to like a twin tail. And a twin tail that kind of swims along real easy. It's still small though. I keep it small. I keep everything pretty tiny this time of the year. So I'm basically in the same boat with Jim on the size of the jig. I keep it pretty condensed down. I also throw a Dirk's jig quite a bit, which is, like I say, it's a small, compact unit. Everything about it's small.
That's even smaller,
yeah,
compact.
it's even more compact than what we're talking here.
Line size, I like 10 or 12 in the winter. What do you use in the winter?
I throw a lot of 10 and 12 pound fluorocarbon.
10 and 12, that's, yeah.
10 and 12, that just, you can feel it better. You got a better sensitivity as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. And when those fish are a little bit deeper, some of them, like on the Dirk jig, the reason I throw it some is because it's actually a half ounce.
Yeah.
It's actually
kind
a
of
half
a ball,
ounce.
more of a ball style, little bitty spider jig here, little bitty hook. What kind of hook is that?
That's actually a salmon hook. Mm-hmm. And the reason we put that in there, it hooks them good,
small weed
and
guard.
It is super tough. You're not going to straighten it out.
Yeah.
It's a little compact jig that you can throw on 15-pound line. I put one of Jim's crawdads on the back of it, and you're set to go. I mean, and it's one of those deals that it's probably laid out on the deck of my boat more than anything else. Is a jig, a little jig, and a crawdad on the back of it. And I let the day kind of dictate when I'm throwing it. If it's a bright, clear day like it is today out there, I'm going to throw that jig 99% of the time.
Yeah, compared to if you have like a little bit of wind or a pretty good chop, may throw something a little different. I know the crankbait bite seems to be coming on pretty good. It usually comes on now, I don't know, until that water drops, I don't know, mid 40s probably. It's strong. Not that you can't catch them on it all year. Or as it gets colder, but like the storm wigglewort, obviously it's always been good. The Spro rock crawler, excellent bait. This is that I call it the medium diving. I think that's what the 50 stands for. 55. So it's a little shallower diver, which probably goes 6 to 8, probably depending on line size and your retrieve on it. Same deal with the wigglewort. Other one, the bomber, the old Model A, been around for forever, hasn't it? I mean, just ever you see the crawfish colored pattern. Dion, you think that's on in the wintertime color on crankbaits?
I start throwing a lot of crawdaddy colors, and when I say that, it depends on the clarity of the water. The cleaner the water, the more translucent the colors.
So like this one here, more of a natural translucent.
Yeah, it's going to be a more translucent color, just cleaner, clearer colors. When you get into slightly dingier water, maybe like the color of your bomber there, something a little more dense and a little brighter. But
I know a lot of guys throw,
prints,
including myself, that red, more of a red color with a dark back, a little stained water, or you like that on cloudy days, or you more water?
I want them to see it, so if you get a day that's slightly overcast or something like that, then I'm going to throw a color that's got a little more brightness to it, something with a little chartreuse on it.
So the crankbaits, I tend to throw just 12-pound test on it. Like, what do you throw on crankbaits?
10 to 12.
10, 12. Gear ratio, big deal. Like 5, 7.
Yeah.
I mean, no more than 7.
I don't get it real fast. I mean, you want to work it. And I try to feel every rock. You know, every time I crank the handle, I want to feel a rock. You know, it bumping into a rock real slow and easy.
So you're reeling it slow, and
yeah.
it's hitting them rocks, and it's diverting it, and it's erratic, and just kind of maybe triggers a bite. You know, instead of just reeling it steady, a lot of different movement or bouncing off of stuff. You know, when it's hitting rocks or stirring up dirt or darting to one side, or it might get them to react and
very
bite.
retrieve. I mean, very retrieve. This time of year, like I say, it's a little bit early for that stuff. So when you get out there, spend 20 minutes cranking the heck out of it. You know, cranking it pretty steadily, and and keeping the speed up. If you don't get bit, change it up, slow it down a little bit, try it that way a little dab. But there's a number of guys catching them on that type of bait right now. Like say the tournament that Lawson fished yesterday, the guys that finished second caught most of theirs on a wiggle wart, and they had one big one. You know, they had a 6
So
pounder
it will
yesterday.
catch big ones, and probably what he's saying with the wiggle wart right now, the retrieve speed is probably most critical, because if you can really crank it, and you can cover a lot more water and increase your odds, but if they don't want it fast, you need to slow it down. So probably, like he said, varying that retrieve until you figure out what they want on any particular day. You know, Topwater still, obviously the head knocker buzzbait, the big 3/4, you can really slow it down and creep it along just on top of the surface. Seems to work pretty good. They either are crushing it right now, or they're not touching it at all. I don't know what the deal is. You know, you'll see a lot of them creeping up behind it, swimming up underneath it, and just tapping it, or they'll just crush the thing and eat the thing. So it's definitely worth throwing on any given days. Today's probably not the day to throw it. Bright sunny day, but if you get a little ripple, overcast, nasty, kind of spitting rain, even a little bit of sleet or snow, and that water's still 50, hovering around 50, you better believe you can have one of those epic days on a buzzbait right now. You know, obviously the River to Sea Whopper Popper, the Chapo works really good, you know, right now. Any other top waters that, I mean, probably...
I tell you the one thing about it, on days like today when you get them bright sunshiny days, one thing that a lot of people do, they just leave that in the box. And really, it's kind of almost a better day sometimes for me for a topwater, because now I have to find a piece of shade. You know, I have to find some place where it's a little shadier, and sometimes you can still get a good bite doing that. You know, get on a shady bank, or you know, get behind a dock where you get a little bit more shade than just out in the bright open clear blue. And all it does is it pulls them to that little shady spot. You know, and I throw a topwater in that type of situation some.
Like the catwalks, you know, underneath these catwalks, it'll create about a 3-foot wide shade, and fish seem to relate to that. We've got lower sun because it's fall going into winter, so we'll get that shade line pretty early in the afternoon, maybe 1 o'clock a lot of times, you know, 8-10 foot off of the bank. I'm assuming that's kind of what you're talking about, stuff like that, or dock corners, or concrete. There ain't a lot of concrete in the water this year.
Yeah, there ain't no concrete in the water now. But just little shady spots. And it doesn't have to be, I mean, it can be a spot no bigger than the three of us sitting here.
Yeah.
You know, and be good and shady. And if you bring your, clack and buzzbait through there, or a Chapo or something like that, a lot of times you can catch fish.
I mean, we've got the shad, like you said, the shad are on the bank. They've been on the bank for a month. They're there. Giant gizzards, there's plenty of them. The bass should be up there. They should be eating them. I just don't know why it hasn't developed so much yet. Ed grabbed this here stick bait.
You said that.
Excellent. If these fish are not committing to the bank, they're suspended off of the bank a little ways, but still feeding on big shad. Just this is kind of a bone with green. This is that Spro mixed stick 110, but anything shad color probably. And just jerking it. Right now you can work it pretty quick, pretty fast, trying to just create a bite or get a reaction bite on it. I don't know, you really think you need to slow it down right now, like the suspended ones, and let it sit still yet, or probably not?
I don't right now. I try to cover as much water as I can, I still pause it every now and then, but I find myself in the same situations, like around the front corners of docks and stuff. I'll pause it right at the edge of the shade, just right in an ambush place.
The front corner.
Front
We're
corner.
talking the shallow side.
Yeah, the shallow side
The
most
shallow
of the time.
side,
But anywhere, like I say, you get a little pocket of shade around the dock, and sometimes I'll throw my jerkbait in there, jerk it pretty vigorously until I get to that spot, and then I might pause it right at the edge of that little dab of shade.
try to draw one out
Yeah,
from
and-
underneath that dock, or
Because those fish on these days like this, they use that shade as an ambush place. That the shade is just like him standing behind a tree or something. It's an ambush area, and when it's bright and sunshiny like this, that's where he's going to
kind
be.
of pushes
sending
them
the edge
all
of
tight to that instead of on an overcast day where we think, well, it's easy, they'll be biting because they're out roaming. Well, they're spread out a lot more than, like he's saying, they
Yeah.
get up underneath these docks or catwalks or in a shade line. It kind of pushes them around there, and I think sometimes it'll push 2 or 3 of them in that same area, and they get a little more aggressive, a little more competitive than just out roaming around everywhere. I know some guys been catching them on Alabama rig already. I say already, they've probably been throwing it for a month. Just the little Kitech little swimming 3.3 on a little Flash Mob Junior is probably a pretty standard, wouldn't you say,
Yeah.
setup for Alabama rig. There's a lot of different variations and different versions, but you stick with this, like this is the Yum. There's other ones. Cellular makes one.
Yeah.
Who else makes a rig? I mean, there's a lot of them out there, real similar.
Mans, there's
Fans,
hundreds of them.
and they're all pretty close. I think probably more so the swim bait you put on the back of it, the size, rather they're feeding on a smaller one like this. What do you have, like a 4.8,
You got a
4.5?
2.8, 3 3s, 4 3s, yeah. They
Different
just go
sizes,
up.
so
you
if
want to
they're-
try to match up to whatever shad that they're keying
Yeah.
on, so.
Right. So that's just like the crankbait. Changing size of your swim baits make all the world of difference on getting bites. With the A rig. The A rig, I throw it on 50-pound braid. I like the braid because if I do get hung up like on cables or brush, you can usually just kind of point your rod at it and just pull steady and straighten out some of them swim bait hooks instead of losing this whole deal here. I've talked to a lot of people about different anglers if they think the braid makes a difference compared to like fluorocarbon. I don't. Do you throw it a lot?
I throw it some. To say I throw it enough to be
Right.
real efficient at it. Now I don't. Benzo, some of the tournaments don't allow it. Some of them do. So I kind of try to stay away from it as best I can. Do I approve of it? Absolutely. It'll catch a damn fish.
Yeah.
So you got to throw it, when you can. I throw mine on 25 most of the time. And I
20
throw
pound fluorocarbon or
25 just mono.
Mono.
Big mono, and I do it for the same reason
Yeah.
you do, it's so I can straighten out my hooks. I throw a fairly light wire hook with mine, just for that reason, so I don't lose my whole rig. And when I say that, I throw one that you would throw for like white bass, just a slightly smaller wire hook, diameter hook. And like I say, it's solely for recovery, so I
Yeah.
can get it back when I get it
Like
hung up.
Crappie makes 2 different versions of swim bait hooks. One's a real beefy hook if you're just fishing open water, and then another one, like he's saying, a wire hook. So you can do just like that. You can pull it loose or straighten that hook out, get your whole rig back, and bend it back. Friday morning we had a trip. Denise and I both had a trip out of Shawnee, and it was pretty slow. And the young man up front, we were watching the live scope, and we seen a big ball of shad. They were out in the middle of the creek, and he had an A-rig tied on there, and he tossed that out there. We watched it go down, and we were watching these fish underneath the shad, and he started reeling this thing, and sure enough, a fish comes straight off of the bottom, one we didn't see, and he came up about 5 foot and crushed that A-rig, nice 4-pounder. So it will definitely draw these fish up off of the bottom, out around these shad schools. You see these big fish up underneath them, but there's everything down there. Whites, catfish, drum, bass. You'll catch them all, but it's definitely a pattern when these fish aren't up on the bank like we want to catch them, and they're out following these shad, which are out in the center of these creeks still, it seems like, you know, so definitely A-rig. Crappie's been good, you know, I always say they're crappie. You can catch them any time of day. You know, Ed crappie fishes a lot, you know, Ed, I got a couple, Bobby Garlands up here. What's our color?
Yep. Blue ice.
Is that
blue
your favorite
ice,
color, your
blue
recommendation?
ice.
If you had to pick one color,
If you had to pick one color, if you talk to any guide on this lake, I think that they're always going to say blue ice is
Yep.
your number one color. Everybody has a blue ice color. We tend to like Bobby Garland because they're the first one that I think introduced the blue ice.
right,
And it's got a bigger color, bigger piece of glitter in it, and that's what distinguishes it from other ones. So, and we had a little laugh about it. I'm old school, I'm the old guy here, and guys are shooting,
Yeah.
they're live scoping and stuff, but you can go out with one of these baits, your regular 16th ounce number 2 jig head, put that on there, put a crappie nibble on there, fish the side of the docks and flip into, and you can catch fish about any given time. I believe that. You know, the crappie seem to always be biting. You know.
and as far as the crappie right now, any crappie we're catching seems to be more main lake or just inside main lake, or if you're back in the creeks around these bigger docks, big cruiser docks with big swim platforms. Same deal with the bass. They cast the shadow out a little further. There's a lot of dark area under them docks.
Yeah.
With the live scope, obviously you're seeing, I mean, schools of hundreds of them, but they're way back up underneath there. So you either got to shoot your crappie jig in there or wait until the early morning or afternoon, maybe a cloudy day. They'll get out on them edges a little more, and just swim them alongside there. Vary your depth, you know, whether it be let it sink down, you know, 15, 20 foot or 6 foot
6
some
foot,
days. You know,
yeah.
some days they'll rise up
Yeah.
6 foot, you know, what, 6 pound fluorocarbon if you know, on your line.
Oh yeah.
Whatever you want to do, you just want to stay above them.
Yeah.
You want to
that's
stay
a good
above
point,
the
yeah.
fish when you're winding your jig in or letting it pendulum back too. You want to stay above. Like if you are so fortunate to have live scope and you know, okay, they're about 7, 8 foot. Well, you want to bring your bait through 4 and 5 foot. You know, keep it just above them because they want to drive everything up. You know, when they're feeding, they want to go to the surface to feed. So they're steadily looking towards the top.
They just naturally want to
Yeah.
feed up
And
on
we've all,
bait.
yeah, we've all done it. I mean, when you get into them where they're biting, you've got and I call it a drift cast. You throw it out there 10 foot, you hold your rod tip up, and that line's dropping, and you know after a couple of times you're sensing that fish is going to bite when it gets to that certain spot.
Whether
Be it
you're
6
counting it down
or 8,
or
whether
whatever.
you're counting it or you know that your line has drifted, you can watch it out there. You see that little tap, which the yellow line, you know, for
Yeah.
me is, for old guys, we call it old man yellow.
You see any
know.
difference in the clear line and bright yellow?
No.
For catching them?
only
Not at all.
difference is
So
the old guys can see it, the tournament guys can see that twitch and stuff.
which
And-
is extremely important on any fishing, but crappie fishing like he's talking about, you'll see that line, it's kind of fairly tight, and it'll just do a little curl, or it goes limp on you, or you'll see it just a little peck on it. So
Yeah.
that bright yellow line, you might as well spool with high vis,
Yeah.
so you can see it. You know, if it's not going to matter to the fish,
Yeah.
throw the
And
high
when,
vis.
when you see that little twerp, that little slack, whatever,
Yep.
and we've got bass guys, you know, these guys hate that, but we've got bass guys using high vis line
Yeah.
when they're jig fishing and the bite is really soft, and they can see that little twitch. And
Yeah.
the whole thing about it is, and I'll steal a line from Lou Davies, hook sets are free.
Yeah.
You know, you see that line go slack, put it to them. You know,
If this here ain't gonna really bother the fish and they'll eat it with all this stuff, I don't think the line size or color, some days I think it makes a big difference. I can't bring myself to throw a high vis 10 or 12 on my little 3/8 ounce jig. I just can't do it. You know, I don't know if it makes a difference. You think it makes that much difference, Dion?
Nope.
No,
Yeah.
you don't think it
He's-
makes a difference.
he's not paying no
So
attention
there
to
you
that.
go. He ain't paying attention to the line.
He's not
is he?
paying attention to that as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
You know, me and my dad for years, now, and we were the same way as Jim. we had a hard time putting it on our jig rig, but I always carry one in the boat with high vis on it of some form. And if you get one of them old dim, dark, heavy, cloudy days or something,
Where you can't
and
see the
where
line.
you just can't see your
Yeah.
line, and there's lots of times I've pulled out my one with high vis on it and used it. Especially when I know, like right now, your bites are not real aggressive. It's just first thing you know, oh, there's one. You know, he's on there. And there's times when I've used high vis. Do I think it makes a huge amount of difference? I don't think it does as much, because I think they're paying attention to your bait. They're looking focused on that jig and crawdad and you know, so I've always got them in the boat, and they're always rigged up, ready to go. All I gotta do is strap a jig on it and throw it. And but when I get out there and I can't see my line, I'm gonna change to it a little bit. You know?
And all it takes is using it for a little bit and catching a few bites on it, and you catch a good one on it. That's going to give you enough confidence right there that it doesn't matter. You know he's right as far as them bass. They're looking at the bait. They're thinking about what they're feeding on. They're not necessarily looking to see if it's got a tag line
If
on
you got,
it like that. You know, I mean,
in this lake right here where we live, we are so fortunate that we have lots and lots of bass. And if it's tough enough that you have to throw 10-pound line to catch them, keep moving. Because there's some stupid ones somewhere
Yeah.
else. Keep moving, you know.
I always say that. I don't try to catch the smart ones. I try
No,
to catch the
yeah,
dumbest
yeah,
ones out there because they're the
That's
easy
right.
ones, you know. So
Well, and if you have qualms about using high vis line, there is a little trick that you can also do, and I'll give that up also. You just throw you a wide tip black magic marker in your boat and color that line up from whatever bait you're using, be it a crappie jig or a bass jig. Color your line up about 2 feet with that black marker, and I guarantee you, when you drop that in the water, you'll realize, because it goes absolutely invisible. That
Yeah.
black part does.
yeah.
So, and you just
So
got to
he's
do
talking
it
about-
this far.
when you started talking about it, I started thinking about like we would run that up higher so you can see the line. You're talking the opposite.
I'm talking
Run it
opposite.
down low. If you run a high vis, run it the bottom 3-4 foot, because then that
Yeah.
marker makes it invisible down there. And I think there's even a line out now that is color every 4 foot increments.
And
You
I
know?
tell you, you can also do it with braid. And braid, it's for topwater. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable, because you can see your plopper out
Mm.
there, and there's 3 feet of nothing, and then
Yeah.
you see your braid. That
Right.
black makes it just totally invisible.
Yeah.
So,
So-
that's one of the best tips I can give on a day like
Well,
today.
and it's an easy tip, and it's
Yeah.
you know, high vis. And if you have trouble feeling a jig bite, if you don't fish a jig a lot and you want to get used to fishing it, the high vis is
Yeah.
probably one of the best things you can use to detect them bites that you're not going to feel. Because personally, I probably feel, you know, maybe half of them. You know, the rest of them it just goes limp. The bite, you know, the line tightens up. It's usually just a limp, nothing, just a little resistance, really, especially in the wintertime. As we get into low 40s, that's all you're going
Yeah, you're
to
lethargic.
feel is something different. You know, you get used to it, a lot of feedback, and then you quit getting that feedback from that jig. That's when he's picked it up, and he's just hanging on to it, or he's swimming off with it. So, you know, jig is all about line watching and being totally, you know, in field with your bait. And you know, we're getting into probably my favorite time of year, because it's jig season for me. You know, all this stuff works, but if I can catch them on a jig, I'm gonna slow down and catch them on a jig. You know, so we went over some baits. All these are working. They're gonna work for. I'm gonna give it another almost a month, wouldn't you say, on any of these?
Yeah.
You know, we'll do a report, you know, a quicker one than in a month if anything changes. But something else, and a big reason I wanted to come down here today is I bring all my reels down here to Ed to work on and oil and condition, because I'll admit it, and he'll tell you, I neglect my reels sometimes, you know, because I want to fish and I don't want to bring them down here and have them work on them. But it is important to keep your reels, like everything, your boats, everything else, in top working condition. So I just wanted to have Ed talk about the service he offers, The important things to look out after on what you can do to your reels, if it's in between having them serviced by Ed, that you might want to do. You know, I use a lot of different reels. I've got some Bass Pro. We talked about what reels seem to hold up better.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, it's some of the cheaper ones. I'll tell you, the Bass Pros, and then some of these other reels, they work all through the winter. I've got some reels that when we were talking, when that water gets 45 or the air gets 45, more so the air, because you're not holding your reel underwater, you're holding it out. They start back spinning on you and they start acting up. And these are some of the higher dial reels. So why does that happen, Ed? And what can you do to prevent that, or is there anything?
Well, there is, and first I want to say, on reel repair, 90% of the time, the issue you have with your reel is as small as your line. And I'm going to back up a little bit before I get to that point. Your $12 Zebco, your $550 Calais. If your line is kinked up on this Calais and it's so sensitive, you'll feel thumps in it as it's coming out through your eyes. These guys here just ball up. A $5 line respool will cure 90% of the problems with this guy, and then you always have the conversation of the twist in the line on these guys. Now, people are argumentative about it, but I'm going to tell you that if you stand there with your reel and you crank line onto your reel just like this, every turn of this reel puts 4 twists in your line, because most all spinning reels are 4 to 1 or 4-3 to 1. It's the mechanics of it. You cannot.
So every rotation,
one spool here turn of that handle turns this 4 times, and you get 4 twists in your line. There's no way around it.
so there's nothing.
You can't turn the spool upside down. You can't put it on
So
a
as far
pencil.
as spooling it,
Right.
is there some way you can spool it better, more tension, less tension, like you
No.
said? Or
What you can do
flipping it?
to get that twist out, and it's a pain in the butt, but you take your line and let it stream out behind you, and that lets that line relieve itself as it goes out.
So in the water?
Yeah, the water. Pressure
So
of
he's
the water
talking in the water, if
pulls it out.
you start getting a lot of twist,
Right.
throw it out there.
The thing we have here with our little machine is we take this spool off, and the line spool is on a handle back there, and it's electronic. This spool goes into the machine like this, and you figure your spool sitting over here. Okay? The machine turns this spool, the line comes straight off of this spool and straight onto this one.
So that's got to help.
There's no twist.
There's no twist.
That's why when people come in, they get their line, and getting line anymore, the big box stores hardly do it anymore. Old guys like us, you know, some of your smaller local stores will still put line on.
Well, nobody else is doing it but small stores.
Yeah.
Like your own, like
Yeah.
yours. I mean,
They want to sell you that full spool of line, but
yeah.
you know, they'll come in, they'll say, you know, my reel works better. Well, yeah, it doesn't have any twist in it. So for a $5 respool, and I throw that out, if it's a smaller reel, we charge $4 a spool a reel, $5 to do a bait cast.
Which is well worth it.
You
know,
can't
you
buy
can
line
a
that cheap
spool of-
because we buy
yeah.
monster spools. And
You buy a spool of line, you know, I don't think you can buy any of them less than 15, 18
Yeah.
bucks probably. And,
Yeah.
you
So
know.
I always touch on the line thing first. Braided line's a whole new different character because it has no memory, it has no stretch. You can put it on there, and it's always phony. You know,
That's why I always talk about on my spinning rods, especially my guide reels, we spool them with braid. And then we put a leader on them just for
Right.
what he's talking about. The twist, the feel, a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So
now,
real quick on the braid, do you feel like the braid hurts a reel at all? Does it affect the reel?
absolutely.
Absolutely.
If you have 65-pound braid on the best reel in the world in the market, they build into a reel at least one plastic gear. And if you get that deal hung up, you get your, say your $30 rig, and you want to get it back, you don't have a tool to get it out, and you don't think about it, you grab a hold of them, you pull against it like this, there's no give from the bait up to the reel. The only place that it gives is that little plastic gear in there, and you will spin it out. It protects the reel from
like
destroying
stripping it?
You will strip the gears right off of it.
Uh-huh.
So that in itself, and lesser expensive rods, the braid will cut the eyes out of them still, you know, because it's sliding through the same spot every time. And it used to be that we had the old Q-tip trick, and you know.
Listen to this. This is a great tip.
Yeah.
That if you're having a lot of trouble breaking off fish, you're breaking your line. It might break 10 foot up in the line and not at the knot, or you're just having a lot of line issues. Here's a tip. I know what he's going to say here. That is a quick tip to know if the problem you're having is not your line, but in the eyes of your rods.
Or even, I'll find one
or
here
even
we
in
can
the
see.
reels.
In the reel, a lot of these reels now, you can see this one right there. It has a metal insert in there, and that braid will cut that insert. Now, like I said, we used to use Q-tips, and we just put them in the eyes of the rods, and it would hook it, and you could feel it. Might still work, but the problem with the newer rods is that these are alkanite guides, and it's so hard that that Q-tip will not stick in it. So what I do, and this is real easy, this is a cheap X-Acto knife. You can use a scalpel or anything else. Something's got a real sharp edge on it, and you put it in that eye, and you turn it.
And if you feel it,
If you feel it hang up, thump, or do anything like that, it's got a crack in it.
and what he's talking about is the old Q-tip,
Yeah.
which you take the Q-tip and you stick it in there and you spin it. Well, the burr or the cut would grab a hold of a piece of that
We took the
cotton
Q-tip, yeah.
and string it out, and you would know.
You put it in there, and it would hang into it, and then you pull it out and just drag it out. Well, about 3/4 of the time it won't work now. So you got to find something that's a little closer.
And you're going to feel,
Yeah.
you will feel it's either a smooth rotation or you're going to feel
Or
just
you're going to feel it catch.
like a clicking.
It's real easy.
And a lot of
Yeah.
times they'll crack,
Yeah.
and you won't see that crack, but as you're casting or reeling, that crack will spread out just a little bit, catch that line,
And you'll
nick
get-
it, kink it.
You get a little burr on your line. You'll see a little shaving maybe come
Yep.
up. Anything that's out of the ordinary, 99% of the time, it's somewhere in that rod. Now, one of my favorite lines is, and you can see this rod here, this is a customer rod. They brought it in for a new tip. I
I
tell
bring a few
everybody,
in every once in a
yeah,
while for a
well,
few
you're
tips.
really good about it. And the reason why is they chase a $2 jig with a $100 rod.
What he's talking about is sticking it down in the gravel and knocking it loose, and the first thing you do is bust the tip
Yeah, first thing you do.
or crack the porcelain.
Yeah, that insert's laying back there on your
Yeah.
line. You go, oh, Jesus Christ, what happened? You know, well,
Yeah.
it's because that's what you did. Now, it's the line now, the quality of line now is so much better also that you don't see those shavings, you don't see it so much, but one little nick in fluorocarbon costs you a fish.
Yeah.
It's just that easy. So,
So it's definitely, if you're having line trouble, before you go peeling off the line or blaming the line, the first thing you want to do is go to the source,
yeah.
which is going to be either the reel, and I really didn't think or check my reel, what do you call this little section here?
The line guide.
The retrieving eye there. I really, honestly, never really considered that being an issue like I do the eyes of the rod. You know, like he said, I've got a reel here. This is a cheaper lose. You can see the reel handles are wore out. And I spool this up with braid, and I never take it off. This is all I use this reel for is braid.
Right.
It's a cheaper reel, and it's got some of the components just don't break down, you know, and this is why I throw my Topwater on, compared to, like you're saying, some other reels that may be a little more apt to having issues. So, other than that,
back to the single biggest problem right now That's what started all of this. Jim come in, we were talking about reels, and he's talking about his line back spinning. And these reels, and this is the old green Corrado, this is an E700, but it's going to be hard for me to show you, but they have, all the reels now have what they call a clutch bearing in them. Spinning reels, and what happens is when you get out in the cold, the oil, if you're a guy that hasn't done maintenance very well, especially, your oil in this clutch bearing, and it looks like this, a little bitty bearing.
What he's showing here, and we went over this a little bit ago, this bearing has a lot of
needle bearings in it.
needle bearings inside here. It's probably hard to see. This one probably has 16, 20 in it.
Yep, 16 or 20. This one here is going to have 7 in it.
This one's going to have 7. So spaced out further, less.
Yeah.
Which one? We just went over this.
We went over it,
Okay.
but we're going to talk about it. The bearing, when it gets cold, the oil or grease that's in it contracts and it holds those needle bearings back. So it won't engage on the sleeve that goes down inside of it. Therefore, your reel, you go to set the hook and that baby just turns backwards. It's the same on a spinning reel. It's the same in a bait caster. The modern ones. The older ones were mechanical. They had a little arm that went down into a cog gear and held in place, and they very rarely went bad except for when it peeled it off or it just broke the little tab that went into that gear. So the repair to do this is really simple, but it's not for the layman or the average guy.
That's not something you want to tackle yourself.
Because that bearing is down inside this side cover, and you can't get to it. You can take your handle off, your drag assemblies off and everything. You can get to the top of it. You might be able to squirt a little oil in there, but it needs to be cleaned out and a light lubrication put in it. That's
And
it.
what about lube? Is there
different
stuff
kinds.
you don't use?
Yes. Now, it used to be that we greased everything. We put grease on the bearings, we put grease on the gears, we put grease on everything. Because that's what guys use, axle grease, they use Vaseline, they use anything they had thinking they could lube it up. But these new modern reels with their real close tolerances do not require that. You put grease now, which I have a big old thing of it. This happens to be ardent grease because it's a real low viscosity and it won't jam you up. We only use that on gears, and then we use oil on bearings. And the one thing that
So there's a difference. You don't want to use one grease on everything or oil on everything.
you get a real stiff reel out of it,
Yeah.
especially when it gets cold, because if you've got it gommed up everywhere. Now, everybody knows right here, this little line guide, the Paul guide, that you can see right here on the front of these.
So he's talking on any reel, and it looks like a spiral, and your line retrieve
it moves the Paul
goes back and forth, is
so
what
your
he's talking
line
about.
loads on your spool right. Now, lack of maintenance will make them jam up on the sides because the dirt builds up in there. Well, the dirt builds up in there because somebody has greased it too heavy, and the grease holds the dirt in there. So now everybody's recommending that we only use higher viscosity oil, which means it's not affected by the sun. You lay that out on your boat deck, and say like you use 3-in-1 oil. 3-in-1 oil is going to melt out of it, and you're going to have a reel making noise before long.
So if you are going to use
a quality,
if you do it yourself,
that,
you may want to grease the retrieve yourself.
Yeah.
Oil it with the oil that comes with the reel.
Yeah, your Quantum hot sauce. Lucas makes a great reel oil, lube. There's a lot of them out there that are good and they have the right viscosity. Just don't go down to the lumber yard and for sure.
So it does make a big difference. That was the whole point of this. You can do more harm trying to do some of this on your own with the wrong grease or oil or in the wrong place than just bringing it in to Ed, let them tell you, or let them break them down and do it right. So when you get that reel back, I'm going to say it's going to be better than new
Sometimes
most
they
of the
are.
time, because who knows the tolerance or who's oiling it or how much attention they're really
Right.
giving it to it, compared to someone that's been doing it for
Yeah.
40 years.
40 years.
40 years.
Yeah.
You know, and has seen the change in different reels, different models. You know,
Yeah, and there's different models. It's like going to Bass Pro, buying their Johnny Moore special. You never know who really built that reel, because Johnny has everybody build their
Yeah.
reels. It could be a Fluger, it could be a Pinnacle, it could be, actually, there was a shot there where I think some Lew's manufactured reels went in as Bass Pro. And when I bring up Lew's, I pick on that because Lew's reels, there for a while, and we've all, that anybody's fished a while, we've had a Lew's. Jim's got them too.
I've got them.
They put them,
He said Bass Pro. I've got them. So
they put them out there with information in the box, and we're all men or women that don't read instructions, and they had a lube schedule in the box. For guys that use a Lew's reel a lot, the first 30 days, they want you to lube that thing, light maintenance lube, every 30 days. And a
just
full,
like our vehicle,
and
you
they
know, get on
recommended a full breakdown
maintenance schedule.
every year. And if you think it wasn't important, just pick up a Lew's that hasn't been maintained. Because the thumb button doesn't want to work, it's rough on the retrieve, the line guide doesn't want to work right. But that's true with a lot of them, but Lew's was a little bit worse for some reason. We've gotten past that now, and their reels are a lot better. But I have a salvage yard that has 15,000 reels in it, and there's some
He's not
Lew's,
lying. There is.
there's some Lew's back there.
Yeah.
So, but there's lots of Shimano's and stuff back there.
So what
And-
I'm getting from all this
Yeah.
is, it's just like your vehicle. They have a maintenance
Yeah.
schedule, and depending on obviously how often you use your reel, how hard you use your reels, it's going to
Yeah.
determine how often
And in this,
you should
this
have
day and time,
maintenance.
we're spending a lot of money for our equipment.
Absolutely.
You know, and you can buy a $100 bait caster and have a good quality bait caster. You just got to keep up with it a little bit. But for sure, you go out and buy one of these Calays or whatever the newest model is now, and you put out $500-600 for a reel. I'm telling you, you need to spend. And in my case, you know, I charge $20 to do a complete breakdown, an inside lube and stuff, and it just keeps your equipment so much better. And you're not out there in the middle of the winter, and you've got that one good bite that you've been looking for a half a day. You go to set the hook, and this thing blows up like a bird's
Yeah,
nest.
and it will.
And it will. So, you know, you got to keep up on top of them. So, you know, I stress maintenance a lot. I'm one of the few guys I get from all over the countryside now, because it's getting to be a lost art.
Yeah.
You know, we're throwing away stuff that can be repaired, and you know, from the cheapest $12.95 one up to the other ones, if you just do your maintenance and do your due diligence, rods and reels, you'll
Yeah.
get a lot more life out of it.
Yeah.
You know.
And you'll have a better day on the water. You won't have near the
Yeah.
aggravation, you know. You know, you get down here on the weekend, you work all week, you get down on the weekend, the last thing you want to do is have issues with your equipment.
Yeah.
So it's well worth, you know, doing the maintenance on them. And this time of year is probably the best time to do it. You know, it may slow
Yeah.
down fishing a little bit.
Well, yeah, but
Not necessarily,
you know,
but
we were talking about
yeah.
it, and all these reels that I'm showing you here have come from a single customer. He brought me in 41 reels.
yeah.
You know, for the winter, get them done, get them ready for spring, and they're everything from the Zepcos to the Calais. He's going to probably go to Canada sometime or do some northern fishing.
So,
But, you know, we don't talk to anybody, we won't ever talk anybody down. You know, if you bring your Zebco in here and you want it fixed, we're gonna take care of it just as well as we do the other guy.
Well, you
And-
talk down to me, because I bring my reels
Well,
in and I
you're
get
one
about
of the world's worst.
I put it off and I come in and I get a 20-minute lecture and then he fixes my reel.
Well,
You think it's bad for you. Think about what he does to me.
I'm flanked
All right.
by two of
Yeah.
the best fishermen on this lake, and they're the world's worst when it comes to reel maintenance.
I don't want to do it. I wouldn't fish, you know. But
And there's some other ones too. Not to be throwing out names, but you know, Facebook, every once in a while stuff goes out. Poor old Joe McBride, he brings me in his reels now every once in a while, and I have to rake him over the coals because it's just terrible.
It saves you so much. You know, when you got guys like me and Jim that fish literally 3 or 4 days a week, it will amaze you how good your equipment really is if you just clean it every now and then.
and you don't realize, because it does break down and a little at a time until you're like, the thing ain't working, and I bring it in here.
And it gets thrown in the rod locker in your boat.
Right,
you
and it
forget about
bounced around and it gets rained on and it gets fish guts in it, and it doesn't work right, and I dip it in the water, the
Yeah, and
the whole deal. But
Yeah.
I get them back and it's a brand new reel. So
just remember,
Yep.
just remember that when you break an eye or a guide or a tip, you can always bring it in here and we can do those repairs too.
Yep. And which I bring mine in all the time. I bring my rods. They either get they get stepped on, or like he says, I dig them down in the rocks. I pull on it, whatever it is.
Yeah,
I bring
your
it in,
listening
I get
audience,
fixed.
we're all the same. We're
Yep.
all in the same boat. So, we're in a throwaway society, but we're here to give you a little more life for your
Yep.
stuff.
Absolutely.
And to keep you going, and if you got to come in and get abuse from the old man,
That's all right.
so be it.
That's all right. But we're going to go ahead and shut this off now, because it'll take forever to load up on YouTube if we don't stop. But I appreciate it, Ed.
Thank you,
Y'all
Jim.
always been here. Dion, always a pleasure talking to you. So come down here. If you're down here at the lake on this west side, Bryant's Osage Outdoors. He can take care of your reel stuff, your rod stuff, give you tips on anything. Obviously, this is a book of knowledge here, Dion. Anything about the lake. For the past, how long you been out here? All your life?
All of his life.
All of your life, and we know the name and the knowledge that they provide. His dad, Dion, Lawson, Peyton, everybody in the Hibden family, and to come into a store and get one-on-one with him is priceless. So until next week, good luck fishing. Be safe down here. Wear your life jackets, and we'll see you.
Thanks. All right, sorry, I didn't
All
mean
right.
to wave you off.
I didn't.
We were, yeah.